Okay, let's start with a question. How many of us went to business school when we started up in business?
I expect there won't be a particularly large show of hands.
No, and that's because most of us decided to go into business just doing something that we love, or maybe something that we're really good at doing.
It's usually a little way down the line that we start to reflect on not actually gaining a grounding in the useful things like sales, marketing, finance and operations.
Yeah, and that's when it all starts to feel, well, a bit difficult.
I'm Nicky. I've been running businesses since 2004, and I'm the founder of the Growth Community, which is a place where businesses come to network and support each other's business success.
And I'm James, and I started my business back in 2020, helping businesses, brands and organisations to unlock the power of podcasting, basically using audio as a way to market and grow their business.
Well, in our line of work, we both meet a lot of businesses and we're constantly learning new things from being around them. Every day literally is a business school day.
So we thought, why not grab some of this good stuff and turn it into a podcast? So please take your seats. Class is about to start.
Actually, in the studio today, it's actually just me and James, because we're going to talk about podcasting because it's such an exciting subject. But actually, I think a lot of people feel that it's quite a scary thing to go to. They don't really understand how they can embrace it in the business. So hopefully, over the course of this conversation, we're going to bust all those myths and give you some homework and how you can get podcasting into your life too.
Exactly.
And actually, I found this really good because I didn't know about podcasting and I'd thought about doing it lots of times before, but it's only through working with you that I've been able to really get to grips with it, see all the behind the curtain a bit as to actually how much goes into it. But if you get that right, how successful that can be. So
yeah, I worry that some people look at podcasting and think it's like, you know, those people on YouTube that have got whatever it is, 4 million odd followers, and they just sit and say controversial things, and you know, it's all very kind of Americanized and stuff like that. And it still blows my mind now. I have conversations with people where I talk about, I do podcasting, and you know, that's what my business is all about, and I work with brands and I work with agencies, and they're like, podcasting and business, how do they work together? And it kind of blows their mind that it's like, you know, podcasting now is at a size, it's 20 odd years old now. It's at a size where we've got like subcategories within podcasting. It's not all just podcasting. So those kind of geeky people on YouTube that are doing it in their bedroom, that's fine. We'll park them to one side. What we're talking about here and what we're doing with this podcast and most of the stuff that I work on is effectively, it's like a, you know, kind of like an audio/audio visual version of content marketing. And that's the way to think about it, is everyone sort of understands blogs and what they're for and what they do. Podcasting is a kind of a version of that, often pretty much using the same sort of content, certainly using the same subjects. You know, if there's a question that people are looking for answers to, then great, you know, they might find a blog on it, the thing that they're looking for. But some people aren't really engaged by just, you know, reams of text. So, you know, kind of providing that same knowledge and sharing that same insight in a way that's a bit more conversational. Like there'll be a blog that someone's done about how can you make podcasting work for your business, and someone will want to read that blog, but then there'll be someone else that thinks this very podcast episode that we're doing right now is the way that they want to learn about that, because they just interact better and they engage better with people talking about stuff, and it's naturally chattier and it is more conversational. And I've got a big thing about the big buzzword in marketing right now as we record this at the end of 2024. If you're listening to this in 2030 and thinking that's not a buzzword anymore, that's why. But storytelling, right? Everyone's talking about, you've got to tell stories. And I sit there and go, do you really know what that means though? Because everyone's going around saying you've got to tell more stories in your business. But what? Because, you know, there's good stories and there's bad stories. You can't just say something is storytelling and therefore it is. Like, podcasting is genuinely, like, we do talk in stories. We tell stories. That's how we apply everyday kind of things to something that becomes easier for us to understand, that's so much easier with our voices than with anything else.
And I think what a lot of people forget about in marketing terms is that actually what we're trying to do in marketing is we're trying to create trust. So the whole point of marketing is that we want to create trust with the people that we want to work with us and the people that we want to buy from us. And for me, that always breaks down into two things: trust. You have to have credibility and you have to have reliability. So your marketing content, storytelling is a really, really great way to prove those things. It shows that you know what you're talking about, that you can prove that you are knowledgeable in your subject, that you are good at what you do. And in storytelling, you're normally talking about how you've helped people, which actually is what resonates with most people. So actually, when you're talking about how you've helped people, you're also proving your reliability because you're being able to show that you do what you say you do, that you know that you are great, that you do what you say you do. You turn up for people. You can talk to the people who perhaps you've actually worked with as well, and they can be part of that story and show that how you did it and how you made them feel. So podcasting just feels like such a human way to do that.
Yeah. What a great way of phrasing it that is. You know, everyone talks about people buy from people, right? And LinkedIn's a prime example of this. We all engage with other people on LinkedIn. You know, business pages exist. They don't get a lot of traction. You sometimes see people really trying to push their business page and you just think it's flogging a dead horse. That's not what LinkedIn's, you know, it's found its niche, and that niche is its people, and the business pages are kind of there, and you get an invite to follow someone's page and you think, oh, I like them, so I will do, but you never really engage with it. And then you go on people's websites and everything's written third person. Everything is really generic because it's kind of got to be. That's, you know, it's business, it's got to be professional. Podcasts cannot be in third person. It's impossible.
Yeah.
Podcasts are people. You know, you can, the day will come where it becomes more commonplace for AI to host your podcast for them. But like, you know, it's people with a voice and with things to say and with stuff to talk about and with opinions about things. Like, it cannot be anything other than people because that's what it is. So, you know, it sits so nicely alongside that less personable stuff that we have to do. The website has to be like that. You can't do a website and go, I really want you to buy from me because like it looks unprofessional. But you can do a podcast that is about people, and it's about stories, and it's about journeys, and it's about what do you think about this? How does this make you feel? Like, you know, it can get into the sort of stuff that we just can't do with, you know, some of the written content that we do, that we can't do with social media posts. That, you know, there's a definite relationship between podcasting and video content, but you think about video content for socials particularly, it's short form, it's snippets, it's very snappy.
Yeah.
It's not very human, it's not very approachable.
And you can't get into the detail, can you?
You
can't touch the detail. And I think as well, and I say this a lot to members of the growth community or even to guests sometimes, is that, you know, people will say, oh, I'm terrified about doing a presentation, I'm terrified about doing a 1-minute pitch, you know, I feel really nervous about it. And I always just say to people, just stop and actually just go back to the basics. Tell people how you help people. When you talk about how you help people, you come alive. The passion comes out in your voice. I mean, okay, you can't do body language on a podcast, but you can still hear that non-verbal stuff going on, because when you talk about what you believe in, when you talk about what you care about, something really magical happens. You stop being a pitch and you start being somebody who talks about what they believe in, what they're good at, how they help people, and why they want to do it. And that whole purpose thing comes over, which I don't think comes over in many mediums. It's really, you know your purpose, but actually being able to get that purpose across in your marketing can actually be quite difficult. And like you say, can end up being quite businessy.
Yeah.
And actually what we really want to do is to be able to get us across, you know, what makes us different, what differentiates us, because particularly in small business, that is the differentiator. There might be 15 IT companies lined up against a wall. Which one do you want to work with? Well, it's the one that you get on with, the one that resonates with you. So how do you get that across? Well, you've got to show something about your personality. And the only way, I think one of the brilliant ways to do that is podcasting, because you can do it in a video to some degree, but actually it's got to be a specific type of video to get that across. So I think there's a really interesting opportunity here for all types of businesses, and actually even big business, because they're the most impersonal as a lot, really, aren't they? They are hidden behind the big corporate thing. How do you get the personality of your business out there? It's actually, when you start thinking about it, it's such a massive area and such a lot of potential, but potentially is being really untapped, really, isn't it?
I think it probably still is, yeah. And personality was a really key word that you used there, because podcasts have to have personality. If someone produces a series of podcasts and there's no personality that comes out in them, they've done something really badly wrong somewhere along the line. Almost to the point where that's quite hard to do, to be able to sit and have a few conversations with people and no personality comes out. That's almost impossible. But there is some really dull stuff that people produce. And I'm a big fan of, one of the things I like saying to people is, because people get themselves tied up in knots a little bit, worrying about, well, I'd like to do a podcast, but what would I talk about, and who'd listen to it, and how long does it need to be? And I go, do you know what? It's just a conversation. It's a conversation that you're recording, because that way it becomes a really efficient way of people being able to consume your conversation. So, we're both big into networking. Networking's great. You get the chance to talk to, it might be 20 people, 30 people that you talk to at a networking meeting. You might have a couple of one-to-ones afterwards. And that's brilliant. That's fantastic. But if you want to kind of scale that much bigger and you want to push that further around the country, around the world, you can't really, networking isn't scalable in that way, but podcasting is. You can have conversations about stuff that people care about, and, you can scale those conversations because podcasting is absolutely international. You can make it available to everyone in pretty much the entire world. But it is just a conversation. It doesn't have to be any more complicated than that. You strip away all the, the kind of the technical stuff, which are just hurdles that you've got to clear, hoops that you've got to jump through. It's just about having really good conversations about stuff that people care about. Now, the thing is, there are bad conversations. Not every conversation is a great conversation. So it has to be a great conversation. You've got to really understand who it is that you're trying to engage. Who do you want to get in front of? Who's going to give a damn about this thing that you're going to talk about? And make sure that you pitch it correctly so that it's actually going to engage with.
And I think that's a really important point, which is what I kind of hinted at the beginning, which was, you get this idea that you just get a microphone, rock up, start talking to each other. And in fact, when we set out to do this podcast, it took us about 3 goes to get it where we wanted it to be. And that was a really interesting process, because I could really resonate with that, because, having a background in marketing for as long as I have had, I think it's really important to make sure that every marketing campaign or any marketing content you're doing, it has to always fit in as part of your plan. You don't just do random marketing. So the decision to do this podcast has been a really interesting journey for me, learning the process and realizing that there is a real sense of consultancy in there, which I found fascinating and really useful. However, not complicated as such, just that if you're going to do a podcast, do it thoughtfully and maybe with some expertise to help you get it right.
Definitely agree with that bit. Yeah, I mean, look, we did go on a real journey, didn't we? And we started out with this idea about doing a podcast about networking, and that kind of made sense. And then, we recorded a couple of pilot episodes and that, and realised actually everyone's going to kind of say the same sort of stuff. People talking about how they approach networking. If people are doing it right, well, it doesn't really differ that much. So that, we kind of realised that's probably not going to quite take us in the route that we wanted to go in. And we even had to go at another different format before we eventually then arrived at the one that we did. But look, let me give you my. I'm often asked to kind of give reasons why someone should do a podcast, or reasons why someone would be good at podcasting, and I go, right, let's do it differently. Let me give you the biggest 2 reasons why you shouldn't do a podcast. Right, so you shouldn't start a podcast because everyone else is doing it. That's a really bad reason to do it. You shouldn't do a podcast because someone told you to, and that someone includes me. Right, so if I say to someone, oh, you should definitely start a podcast, that's not a good enough reason. No. It's about, where does this fit in with the marketing that you're doing at the moment? Where's your business going? Where are you trying to get to? How can podcasting help accelerate that? How can it help you get from where you are now to where you want to be? Who are you trying to talk to? Who are you trying to get the attention of? Are they more likely to be engaged by some conversational storytelling content through podcasting? Be that just audio, or be that audio and visual? What do they care about? Can you facilitate interesting conversations with people about those things that they care about? And if they listen to that, what can you get them to do next? How can you move them that little bit closer to ultimately doing that thing that you really want them to do, which is probably buying from you or signing up for something? because, podcasting is very much top of funnel. It's very much about getting people's attention, engaging with them. It's probably going to be the first experience of you that person has. So it's not an opportunity to sell to people at that stage. That's too early in the process.
Yeah.
But, it's a good opportunity to get them engaging with you, liking who you are, liking what you've got to say about stuff. They might even binge on you. If they listen to one of your podcast episodes because they follow the guest or they're interested in the guest and think, oh, there's another 6 here, I'll have a listen to these. Someone spends all weekend listening to your content. You've got them at that point.
Yeah.
Just don't balls it up. Just make sure that, your call to actions aren't jumping too far ahead. You're not trying to sell at that point. Try and get them, onto an email list, maybe get them to sign up for an email newsletter, engaging with you on social media. Maybe, you could do something whereby they can sign up for an intro call or, fact-finding call or something. Don't try and sell it at that point. If you can get that stuff right, it fits really well into a full, properly thought out marketing plan. And it can be a real key ingredient in that as well.
And to be fair, and we all know this, is that, the people we're talking to now, they may not even remotely be in the buying cycle for what you do. They might not even be on their radar. It's just something they go, and as long as they know where to keep finding you and they know where to keep hearing about you and you are still in their peripheral vision, at some point, whenever that is, whether that's 6 months or 5 years down the line, it's part of that process of just keeping them, slightly warm so that when they do jump into the buying cycle, they know who they're going to talk to. And so, it just really complements the marketing, all the channels you've got. It's part of that marketing mix, isn't it? And it's really supporting that trust side of things, that credibility, giving them something that's really helped them. There's something really, really supportive of the whole process, I think. If you get it right.
And that's a real key point, isn't it? It has got to be right. And this is where I contradict myself a little bit. Because I say to people, it's just having conversations. But then people go, great, well, I'll buy a microphone and I'll just do it. And I'll go, actually, no, you need to think about what those conversations are. You need to think about the people that you're aiming at, how long are they likely to give you? Like, we all know the kind of the celebrity podcasters who do 3-hour long episodes. Well, chances are, if you're doing something for your business, people might not give you 3 hours.
No, I don't think I've got 3 hours to do anything.
You're asking for quite a lot of someone's time to give you that up. So that would be a reason for them to skip past your podcast and to go to something else. So, you've got to arrive at the right answers to those things, and you have got to talk about the right stuff. And chances are, whatever industry you're in, there's probably someone else doing it already. They're probably rubbish, right? Because most podcasts are crap.
Yeah.
So there's probably still an opportunity to be better, and that's I hate the word better because what does it even mean? But to produce something that's of a better quality in terms of the audio, a bit friendlier, a bit more kind of story taste, a bit more conversation rather than just talking at people, but actually to be more specific in terms of really covering the stuff that the target audience care about. But that's where it takes thought, and that's the strategy side of it, which is dead important to get right. And I think if you can nail the strategic side of approaching the launch of a podcast, then it does feel like, oh right, so I'm just going to sit down with this person and talk about this thing. It doesn't need to be, we've not planned meticulously the conversation that we're having now. We knew that it's a subject that's relevant for our audience. It's relevant for the podcast concept that we've got. We had a fair idea about where we saw the conversation going, but it is just a conversation. But it's a conversation that's got logic from the outset.
Yeah.
And that's what you've got to get. So there's a bit of balance to do, and just picking up a mic and seeing what happens, that's not good enough. It needs thought if you want to be better than those other podcasts that are crap in your space.
But if you're trying to sort of find your place and your niche, then picking up a mic and just seeing what comes out is a really good way to just explore the ideas, isn't it? So
yeah, well, I'm a really big fan of this idea of, like, I call them pilot episodes or test episodes or stuff. And it's like, if that's how you work best, the idea of saying, all right, well, I'm going to record this pretend podcast with someone, let's see how it comes out. That's fine, but don't do that thinking that's going to be episode 1. Like, you will get a lot of stuff wrong, and you'll listen back to it and think, oh God, it's terrible. I'm going to have to reach out to that James guy that was on that podcast and get his help on stuff. Like, it will go wrong, but it does with the stuff that I work with people on. Like, we do a pilot episode because it doesn't go according to plan, and we learn stuff from it so that when we actually do start recording proper episodes, we get it right.
Yeah. So before we get into our inevitable homework that we like to set our listeners, what do you think would be without having all the kit that you've got, if we're just going to set up a podcast, what's the basic level of kit that we could use to sort of set up a reasonable quality podcast? I mean, you're a professional, I'm not. So if I just wanted to do this off my own back, what basic kind of equipment or software do I actually need?
So we're in this weird place now whereby we've got this split between people that are really passionate about, I want to record with people face to face, which is quite geographical. We don't travel as much as we used to do. So if you're recording something whereby all your guests are going to be close by, that's an option. Now, in-person recording becomes more complicated because sticking an iPhone in the middle of a desk and just recording it, sticking one microphone in the middle of a desk and recording, it's probably not really good enough. We're doing this in a room in a hotel. I mean, that sound quite sinister the way I did that. It's a boardroom in a hotel. We've not hired a bedroom together. But we've got a microphone each. We're doing another episode after this, so we've got a third microphone on the other side of the desk as well. So this is a much more complicated setup. So I would point people probably more towards starting off as an online podcast. And people's go-to is, oh, well, that's fine. I can just use Zoom. And that's the point where I'll put my hand up and go, yeah, okay, you can. You can just use Zoom. You can use Teams. You can use Google Meets. They've all got functions for recording. And we've been doing this for the last few years, sitting in front of our computers, having conversations with people. But if you want to get in that kind of cut above those other podcasts that aren't very good, right? If you want to be the best in your space, then you will get much, much better sound quality by investing in, not an expensive, but just investing in a microphone.
Yeah.
So rather than using your laptop mic or your webcam mic, just get a USB microphone, £40-50, something like that off Amazon. Happy to send recommendations to people, and stick a pair of headphones on rather than letting it come out of your speaker, because then your microphone is picking up what the other person's saying because it's coming through your speaker, but it's also recording what they're saying at their end of the conversation. You've got an echo, right? So, wear headphones and it gets rid of that. So, just pretty simple things like that. But then also, it's worth spending a little bit of money on using a proper online podcast recording platform rather than just using Zoom and Teams, because they're great, but when you record on those platforms, it just records exactly as that call takes place. So if you've got someone who's got, Wi-Fi's not having a great day, sticking a little bit, it's freezing a little bit, it's a bit jumpy, that's exactly what you're going to record. So if the call's not brilliant quality, your podcast is not brilliant quality. I use a platform called Riverside. Same sort of thing. So you have a call, which feels very much like it does on Teams or on Zoom, but it records people locally onto their machine at their end of the conversation. So it's almost as if we say, right, okay, we'll all get on a Zoom call, but we'll all set up this little recorder in front of us and we'll record ourselves separately, and then we'll put all those files together afterwards, so we're all in great quality. Well, that's quite complicated. So Riverside does that for you. Does the same with video as well. So it'll capture everyone's video separately as well. So at the end of that, you've got a really high quality audio file for each person that's on that call. Yeah. So it's a bit more complicated because it's outside of people's comfort zone, which Zoom and Teams and stuff like that are on. But I have this thing where I talk about, 95% of podcasts aren't very good. You want to be in the 5% that are doing it properly. One of the things that gets people into that category is that step up in terms of sound quality. If I listen to something and it's like, it's been recorded on Zoom, my heart sinks a little bit because I just think, I know there's going to be bits of this conversation where I can't really tell what people are saying because the quality is just not there. So, they're the kind of things, and that's pretty kind of basic stuff. You can get way more complex into that. But, just getting that really nice, crisp, clear sound so that people can really understand what you're saying. And then all they're interested in are the words that are coming out of your mouth. They're not thinking, oh God, I can't quite hear was that a lorry going past in the background? I can't hear what, just make it really easy for people to hear what you're
saying. And in terms of editing, I found a great little app that I use for editing my video, which is called Descript, and you can do it the same with your podcasting. Yep. It works purely on just using actually the transcription of it, and that just makes life so much easier because I'm not an editor. I don't have time to go and learn how to do it. So from a basic perspective, it can be a real quick and dirty way to just actually be able to edit your stuff so that what actually you put out is exactly what you want it to be.
And here's the interesting thing with Descript. So I mentioned Riverside because that's the platform that I use for recording podcasts. And once I'm into using a platform, I very rarely kind of break away from that. But there used to be another platform called Squadcast, which was kind of the same, did the same sort of thing as Riverside. Squadcast was bought by Descript, so it's now built into Descript. So all the stuff that I just talked about that you can do with Riverside, side, you can now do within Descript itself. So, you can create quite a simple workflow that's going to get you better quality than other people are doing just using one platform.
Well, and it just makes life easier, doesn't it? So we're basically at the point where we're going to do our homework.
Yes.
So what homework are you going to set our listeners for this episode?
So I'm going to keep this nice and simple. So often people think, okay, podcasting sounds fun. It sounds like something that could work for me. I can't even figure out what I talk about. And people get stuck on that. Now, I'd argue, firstly, it's a little bit further down the line. You probably don't need to worry about it too much at the beginning. But in terms of a starting point to figure out what could your podcast for your business look like, just worry about 6 episodes. Don't think about, am I going to do one a week for a year? Am I going to do one? Just think about 6. Doesn't matter how you're going to release them. Could be a season of 6, could be one a month, whatever. Doesn't matter. Just think about 6. So come up with 6 topics that you think the audience that you're trying to get in front of are going to care about. Or it could be 6 questions. It could even be the 6 questions that you get asked the most when people call you to inquire about stuff. Or 6 people within your network or 6 people within your industry that you think have got interesting stories to tell. Ideally, you'd make those things match. So it'd be great if you think, I've got 6 people that I know can talk about these 6 things that people really care about. You've got a plan there. You've got a starting point. You've got a bit of proof of concept that there's something in this. There's still a bit of a way to go. There's a few hurdles that you've got to jump over, but you've got a starting point, and it kind of makes sense, doesn't it? So that's what I would say is try and come up with an episode plan for 6 topics, 6 questions, 6 people, any of those, any combination of those, and you've got a little bit of proof of concept.
And going back to what we said at the beginning, if it's going to prove your credibility and it's going to prove your reliability and it's bolstering your marketing that you're doing in your marketing mix, then actually it's just going to sit perfectly within that mix, isn't it? So there you go. You've now got a little blueprint. Go and have a go at podcasting yourself. And obviously, if you actually want some help with that, how do they go about doing that, James?
Well, there's a few ways of doing it, but the best one is to employ me. But no, genuinely, like if you do go down this road and you think I need a little bit of help just to get going, I'm dead happy to have a chat with people. Kind of no strings attached to that. So best thing to do is reach out to me on LinkedIn. If you search for James Marriott, I've got a little microphone and a headphone next to my name. You can't mix me up with anyone else. Drop me a line, and I'm more than happy to have a chat with anyone.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for today. We've hopefully got more people excited about podcasting.
Yay. Well, thank you for your attendance today. I hope you've learned something new. Every day is a business school day after all. If you'd like to contact us or perhaps put yourself forward as a future guest, find either Nicky or myself on LinkedIn, or you can drop us a line using the links in the show notes. Right, school is out. Please wait for the bell before you leave.